This is a tour of kind of the state of the system, but also in the context of a course that we're really excited to be running. So this is our online graphic novels course, and it's really been driving a lot of the system's development for the last several weeks now. So let's see, from a navigational perspective, using the container index pages. So if I were to try and edit this, you see it's basically just a folder. If you switch it to a folder, then it just shows the links, but I'm not going to do that. An index page loads everything below it and then automatically generates this in-page navigation called Magellan. You can go down into some of the other units and lessons here. It's pretty standard fare media, some decent tables, modifications to color. Okay, so typical flow here, and you see the breadcrumb's been walking its way down. We've got introduction, we've got a journal entry, drawing exercise, comic exercise, and then a page. You can see I can kind of trace my way back up pretty easily, know where I am. We go to the full table of contents of this course, and I can see there's a lot of stuff here, but know that I'm on lesson 1. So let's see what happens when we drill down into here. Go down, we've got a journal entry. It says, hey, you got to write some stuff. And then we get this interesting little link here. So these kind of call attention to themselves. So the color, and there's decent area information on it as well. The color indicates, hey, this is you haven't done this yet. So the action item I have to take is I have to submit lesson 1 here. So I click submit lesson 1. It's going to pop me up to effectively another site. So there's another site loaded here, and this is for me to finish section 1. Now I see a little more data because I'm an admin versus a student, so students won't see, like the exercise field. They don't have this connotation of group audience, for example. So I might write about something. Here. Body area, nothing fancy there, but we can throw in some Ipsum text, what have you. See, we've also got a jQuery countdown here, which is kind of neat. These are supposed to be timed activities, not necessarily, when this hits 0, you're going to be told to submit, but it's for a frame of reference. You're not really supposed to take a lot of time to do this exercise. This is supposed to be to kind of generate ideas. So we're going to save that, and see, we reload. We're actually we've at my article right here. Okay, so we can see this is what I might write about. It's for lesson 1, all my Ipsum wonderful text. And then we've got these story seeds, which are kind of a pervasive element. And so these are just little blips of ideas that are drawn from the exercise in question. So if you imagine the flow of instruction would be that I kind of learn about a concept, I learn about a technique, and then I'm supposed to take a prompt, write as much as I can about it in 10 minutes, and then go back through and say, okay, what of my ideas should stick here? Oh, I really like what I did there. And so I might go through and I might take this idea and I copy and paste it, and I take this idea and I paste it in there, right? And so I'm creating basically a bank of ideas that are really good from this larger text. And click to add more if I have other ideas I need to write about. So I get another field, and we can say add that one, right? So we'll save, and then I'm gonna, I just have my story list here. When I close, though, it's gonna actually refresh the outer interface and we'll say, hey, that this has been submitted. So it is able to figure out the other system based on basically querying another system in ELMS Learning Network. It figured out that I successfully submitted my work there. So you can see the text we have for this is view submission. These submission fields are kind of interesting because it's a token that's generated. We're kind of affectionately referring to them as remixables at the moment. And you basically get some gobbledygook like this, right? This is almost nonsensical to read, but it's basically programming this part of the page to say, hey, I need you to connect to another system. I need you to render what you're about to connect to as a submission field. I need you to look and see, if they submitted this. These are the keys. This is the item they actually have to submit. you know, what the text should be. So that's why it says view submission. It could say anything else. So we've got a lot of these, and they actually, the pages generate them themselves. So if we go back, we can see some other ones. Just go through the flow of instruction here. I'm in the courses system still. So you'll see, hey, there's another one. You'll notice the difference in iconography. This is the icon that is representative of our journaling tool. And I can see that if I click my network here. You can see we've actually got a content outlining tool, which is what you're in currently, my journal. I've got a studio environment, some discussion boards, and then a bunch of administrative systems that the students don't see. So these are things like CIS, ELI Media, our analytics engine, stuff like that, so that I can just quickly jump to those, keeping in context of what my course is. So that's the journal, right? So I submitted a journal entry. This is actually a studio exercise. And so the studio exercises give an estimate, say, hey, you should spend about 20 minutes, but there's art production involved. So like, you're not going to click and open this and then you know, draw a picture, right? And then take a picture of that and upload it in 20 minutes. Like, there's no reason to kind of, you know, force that on you, if you will. We could put a timer in the page that says 20 minutes, obviously. This is a sample submission here. I've got my images. The assignment in question supports all kinds of different media types, but this one just happens to be that it supports images. Again, I see some fields that not everyone's going to, like energy, which is, we do some neat things with that. I'm going to save this. Again, because I am an admin, I get an additional message that other people won't. And so we save. You can see the images, open them up. Let's close that. See, we refresh again automatically. Hey, click to view your submission. Now if I click this, jumps to me there and I see my happy image, right, with my sample submission thing that's on my door. People can add comments. Granted, this is just going to show me mine, so if there's comments that start to stack up about mine, I can quickly reply to them here. But I can jump to some of the other exercises. They're not terribly different, but you'll see, you know, again, this is, I'm going to be submitting lesson 1 comic exercise. This would load up frame. So we're kind of keeping you in the flow of instruction the whole way through. But you might say, okay, well, I need to do something that's outside the flow of instruction. Let me find one. All right, so lesson 5, I believe, has research. Research, I think, takes you somewhere. No, that one's for discussion board. So again, there's the icon to suggest discussion, and then we've got this action text, but it's green to indicate that I already did it. So let's say that in the flow of the page, it said, hey, I have to go to my journal, or I go, oh, you know what, I want to read my journal entry, and I'm not in the context of the material, right? It's may not have noticed, but the address changed. And so this is kind of part of the premise of ELMS Learning Network. So if I jump back to content instructional flow, you see I have courses and then the course in question. This is our blog platform. For this course, it's a very private journaling system as opposed to a public, you know, connotation of a blog. So you can see I've got my journal here. Hey, there's the submission I made, right? So even though I was in the flow of the material, I made a submission. It actually was saving it to this system. And so I can go check out my journal article. I can append to my seed list. I can say, oh, you know, it's not actually related to that. I'm going to pull this out. I'm going to check out my story seeds that I have. Okay, cool. Just read those. Let's just work on those because I had this really neat idea. Again, I see this page because I'm an admin, so no one see that. So saw a dog walking today. Really cool stuff, right? So I might have an idea that's outside of the flow of everything else I'm working on. I can add that to my seed bank. Go back to my journal, right? If I'm the instructor, I can click to lesson 1 and I can see everyone's submission for this. We're going to add some additional interfaces, some views and things, so you can slice the data differently. But this is actually the way that things are, you know, kind of programmed into the outline. So I'll take a later one, let's say lesson 15. So I could go to lesson 15, and there's this button over here we're calling, it's the share button, right? It's kind of people to people connections. So I'm going to open this up, and you'll see there's a thing that says submit widget. And now anywhere that I copy and paste this in any system, it will be able to correctly talk back to the blogging platform and say, hey, has the person submitted XYZ? And so I can go to content outline, and we'll go to a much later page in this course as to where this would actually go, because I don't believe it's already in place. All right, good. So there's nothing there yet. I can hit edit on this page, and I take that remixable, I paste it in there. You see it's a whole bunch of stuff. So what we'll get is this, right? So instead of long code, it turns into that. And so these remixables can be generated effectively anywhere. You can get all kinds of different types. So for example, this is if I wanted to create a direct link to the page I'm currently on. So for example, maybe I'm over in the journal, jump over to our journal area, and I just want a direct link here because maybe my directions are setting up, hey, you should go submit something or go review your journal, right? An actionable item, actionable text. And then maybe I go and I create, dump in a template here. Let's throw in our 2-column or a topic reading, for example, right? So optional thing, we don't have an optional thing. We kind of start to axe that out of there. But the required is make sure you check out, check out your journal. I left feedback. All right, and you're required to do this. So now we come down here and we'll paste in our direct link to this, and instead we'll say review your journal instead of the default text there. Okay, hit save on that. And so now we have a review your journal link, which again, the icon is indicating, hey, you need to check this out in the journal, the journaling system. It's got an actionable, hey, go do this. But then I click it and it's just taking me there. So the orange currently, that is it's a status thing. It's saying like, hey, you have to do something here. But it's not necessarily indicating that you did it or did not do it, kind of deal. Jumping around a little more, we can check out the studio where we submitted that media from before. Okay, so now we're over in the studio area, and you see we've got these submissions. I'm going to have to do behind the scenes at the moment because I made that submission. And so you'll see this page is figuring out for the student what they've submitted. So there's a lot of submissions here. I submitted this. It was called sample submission. So I can jump to that. Got my sample submission. Again, I could see the comments of my peers, look at my image again, see when I submitted it. The studio lets us go through, and we've got kind of 3 connotations for this instance of the studio. There's kind of Sketchbook, which would be a really rough draft. We've got draft pages, which is I'm building towards what I'm actually going to submit. And then there's final pages, which, again, because it's a graphic novel course, the pages connotation, you're sketching some cells, you're eventually getting up to something that you say is a final product. So I can jump to my Sketchbook. And since the submission I made is part of the Sketchbook, I can kind of review everything that's in my Sketchbook, just look at all my media across the thing. We can do the same with the draft pages, final pages, but I haven't submitted those. And then there's Open Studio, which Open Studio will then allow me to kind of filter through and see the work of everybody. So that's how you can kind of discover other artists in your class. As far as the submission widgets for this, it's assignment lists, and I could go to something like lesson 6, and because I'm logged in, I can click my remixable generate a code same way, and this one will take me to drawing exercise, right? So this doesn't have a lot of directions directly in here, but the studio can also house the directions of submitting this. We have a lot of flexibility built into the studio submissions, so you can say what the requirements are, if there's any dependencies on other things. The order is just what order it shows up in. Some permissions, like whether it's public or private, whether or not it's, people have to submit before they can view other people's, which is a nice little way of making sure that they're not being unduly influenced by their peers before submitting. A due date, which we currently don't enforce. It's mostly for communication purposes, and logistics. So And here you see we've got that this is an activity, which is what makes it show up on our exercises draft pages area. And then the last system on here is the discussion boards. So we just have very basic discussion boards, and I can jump in and see what my posts are versus my discussions. I started all of these posts, so I obviously have have them all here. And you see the conversations haven't started yet in this course, but that I could reply as a new thread. I could like this, basic forum functionality, nothing too crazy here. This does also allow for the remixables. So I could say, oh, okay, well, I want to generate a submit widget for this, and then we have a conversation in the context of the page. We're still working on a lot of the styling around some of these other things, but it's coming along fairly well. You can see that the UI overhaul is really helping unify, kind of where you go, what I'm expecting when I get there. A lot of things driven by iconography, and a lot more systems starting to show up in the roadmap and reach a state that we're running them in production. So very cool times. Got a bigger team now. Very excited. Very excited.